I made the sad hamster sock doll on my 22 needle circular knitting machine, and this has been edited from a live I did a while back, and I can show you step by step how you can make one for yourself, and you can follow along with me. So what you're going to need is a 22 needle circular knitting machine. I use the Centro, and then I also have the yarn. This is Premier Anti-Pilling number 4 worsted weight gray yarn. And then I have safety eyes that I got off of Amazon and a safety nose. They're in my Amazon storefront link. And then I also have these reusable glue pads. I use these to hold down my knitting machine so it doesn't move around on my countertop, which is also available on Amazon. And then I put my yarn in a basket below the machine, and then we go to cast on. I start at my black needle. On my machine, the black needle is the number 1 needle. So I go under so it hooks onto the needle, and then we go over and under each needle one time around until we get back to that black needle. And this is the cast on. This does not count as a row. Once we get back to that black needle, we put it down into the yarn tensioner, and then I ended up putting this on the loosest tension. I start in the middle, but then you'll see I do move it to the loosest tension, and then I crank 40 rows. If you get 41 or 42 rows, that's not a big deal, but I did about 40. And then I have the finger row counter, or you could get a digital row counter off of Amazon as well. Next, we're going to cast off using my plastic sewing needle, and I just do 1 needle at a time when I cast off, and this just seems to help so I don't drop any stitches. And it seems like it takes a little bit more time, but really in the end it takes less time because you're not pulling extra stitches off of the machine, dropping the stitches and having to redo them and fix them. So after I cast off, then we are going to now make our sock doll. So if you've ever made a beanie hat with me, we're doing the same thing. We're making a double layer beanie hat, and we want the knit side, which is the V stitch, to be our exterior. This is the V side, this is the purl side. So the V side stitch, that's going to be our exterior, and we put both tubes on one side. And then when we cast on and cast off the way we did, it makes like a drawstring effect. So just take the tail end of that yarn and pull it, and it will cinch it down tightly. And then I take my sewing needle. I cut off a little bit excess of the yarn, but then I take my sewing needle and then I knot it down and sew it back and forth a few times, so it keeps that hole closed nice and tightly. After I do that, now we're going to cinch the other tube closed. I keep the tail end of the yarn out, cinch it closed. I knot the tail end yarns together. And then again, I do the same thing. I put it on my sewing needle, I knot it down and sew it back and forth a few times. And this is essentially how you make a double layer beanie hat, just a really tiny version. So now we're going to put on our eyes. Again, I got these ones off of Amazon. They're just safety eyes, and it was a whole kit, came with all this for the eyes and the nose. So I like to use where we cinch down the top of the tube as like its little mouth. And then I put on the safety eyes. These were the largest one that came in the kit that I used. And I put on the eyes, and then I just put on the nose. I didn't put on the back at this point. I was just trying to get them spaced the way I want it. Once I had it the way I like it, then these backs just pressure fit and pop on and snap down onto the eyes. They're really easy to install. And so I do the eyes first, and then I put back on the nose where I want it. I decided to use a little pink nose. It came with a brown nose, pink nose, and black noses. So this was the smallest nose as well. And so I'm just making sure he's centered between the eyes the way I want it. And then again, you can put on the back, and it's just the pressure fit backing that just pops down with just a little bit of pressure with your fingers, and they work really nice. You can also crochet your eyes and nose if you want to as well. I just opted to do these. Next, we're going to fill it with our polyfill. And so you just grab a few handfuls and get them all stuffed in there to get them how you want it. I like a nice little chunky hamster. Once I do that, and I get them filled as much as I want, now we're going to take some extra scrap yarn of the same color yarn from our project, and we're going to sew in and out around the stitches like so, and this is going to create another drawstring effect, and this is going to close up the back side of the hamster so none of that polyfill falls out. And you only need to do this one time around. So I'll just speed this part up a little bit as we go once around, weaving in and out with our sewing needle. Once we get back to the start where our tail end of our yarn is, you just take the two ends and you pull them tight, and it creates a drawstring effect. And then as I pull them, it's just cinching it down, and then I knot it to close the hole. And then again, I take my sewing needle and I sew back and forth a few times and then knot it again just to make sure nothing comes apart or open. And so now I'm just sewing that down, and then we'll knot it, and then you just hide the ends of the tail ends of the yarns inside the hamster. So it's really easy to do. Put it on your knitting needle, push it through the back side and then out any side of the hamster, pull the yarn tight. After you get it out, cut it off, and then the extra pieces will just hide right inside of him. You'll never see him again. So that's really easy to do. Lastly, we're just going to make his little ears. And to do that, I get, again, some scrap yarn of the same color yarn that I used to make the hamster. Put it on your sewing needle, and I kind of line it up in the center of his eyes, just back a little ways, and I give it a little pinch so there's some polyfill in there. Put your needle in, and then put the needle on the other side of the yarn, push him through too so it kind of makes a loop. And then you're just going to sew back and forth a little bit. I knot it down to secure it, sew back and forth a few times, and then you'll knot it down again, and it'll just kind of create his little tufted ear. So it's pretty easy to do. You just kind of just look at it and sew back and forth, and it's just kind of creating that crease with that little bit of polyfill from the pinch that you did with the yarn. And then once you get sewed it through a few times, you'll take the two tail ends of the yarn, knot it together, and it kind of pinches up his ear. Like so. And then you do the same thing. Once you get that done, you'll take the two ends of the tail yarn, knot it together, and then you hide it inside the body of him. Just like that. And now knot it. And then this last little knot will create that extra little pinch that it needs so the ear sits up nice for you. And now we're just hiding our tail ends of our yarn inside the hamster. My tail end was a little short, so I'm going to go in backwards on this one. And then I'm able to get the yarns off of the needle and then take the needle out. And then we just pull tightly and cut it, and they'll hide right inside of him, and you'll never see him again. Next, you'll do the same thing for your second ear. You want to give it a little pinch and then make a loop with your yarn, kind of like a U shape, and then I tie it down, and then repeat the process again. You'll just sew it back and forth a few times until you get it to how you like it, and then knot it again. I like knotting it in the back side of the ear, and it kind of just pulls it nice and tight. And then weave in your ends and hide them inside of your hamster, and your sock doll is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like and follow for more free tutorials, and happy crafting. Thank you so much.